All right, so welcome back. We are now starting lesson two. We're going to start talking about sleep. So, when we start talking about sleep, an important thing to know is that we're on a circadian rhythm, which means that every 24 hours, your body's on this timetable where it has all these different processes that need to take place. So, we have the example for sleep over here. Some other things that are on a kind of circadian rhythm are, again, sleep and wakefulness, your metabolism, your core body temperature, your cortisol or stress levels, your melatonin levels, which melatonin is what your brain secretes to help you feel kind of tired, and then other hormones such as growth hormone, which would be like when you are trying to conceive and have a baby, your human growth hormone would change, your thyroid hormone, which is impacted by your metabolism, etc. So, what is going on with sleep being a rhythm? Well, let's start with 6 a.m. So at 6 a.m., your melatonin secretion stops. So the hormone that you've created that will help you feel tired, or the supplement that you're taking that will make you feel more tired, that stops. Then your testosterone gets the highest first thing in the morning. For those people who are also, as we mentioned, trying to conceive, that growth hormone, that is usually the highest first thing in the morning. Next, you have your highest alertness kind of mid morning. Then we hit noon. Around noon, that's going to be your time for your fastest reaction time and your best coordination. So you've been up, you have been moving around, you have been active, you are usually way more alert than normal. Your greatest cardiovascular efficiency and muscle strength is going to happen later afternoon. Then we hit 6 p.m. So from 6 p.m., that's when our blood pressure starts to raise, our body temperature starts to raise, and our melatonin starts to kick back in and remind us, hey, we need to go to sleep soon. Shortly after midnight is typically your deepest sleep, and then your lowest body temperature happens probably, what would we call that, around 4 a.m. So, your body goes through this whole cycle, this whole rhythm over the course of 24 hours and does this every day, usually without failure, without too much fail. All right. So, we're not going to talk too much about our master clock, but just know parts of your brain are in sync with the sun. So as soon as sunlight hits some people, they like immediately wake up. A lot of people they feel more positive. They wake up with the sunlight, kind of waking them up, except instead of an alarm. This is a common thing. There's literally areas of your brain that are like, "Hey, we picked up on some sunlight. We need to get up. We need to be active. We need to go and do these things." All right, so short brain break. If you want to pause the video, go ahead, fill this in your notes. But do smartphones affect your sleep? So, when we're using a smartphone just for bedtime, we realize consciously that it's time to sleep. However, our bodies kind of take in that blue light that's emitted by the screen, and they will actually confuse us for a daily sleep wake cycle that you're used to. Because that blue light is very harsh on your eyes, it kind of mimics the sun in that sense. So, that leads us to feeling wide awake, scrolling through TikTok longer, staying online, seeing what everyone's up to, texting our friends, when we should be falling asleep naturally. So, do you think this is accurate? Do you think smartphones affect your sleep? Are you someone where even if you're playing on your phone, you can still fall asleep within the normal time frame? All right. So, we're going to move on to the sleep wake cycle. So, sleep has a biological rhythm. We talked a little bit about what that was beforehand, but the cycle goes through every 90 to 110 minutes in five distinct stages. So, this will occur about 3 to 5 times per night. Typically, what it's going to look like is stage one is that falling asleep and light sleep. Stage two is the heart rate's going to slow down, the body temperature is going to drop. Stage three is your deep sleep. During this deep sleep, there's muscle and tissue repair, which is super, super pivotal for your health and well being. Then, our kind of step five, so to speak, or REM, is when your body is paralyzed. That's when your dreams actually begin. So, your dreams are going to happen during REM sleep. All right, so if you're ever interested, you can hook someone up to an EEG. This is going to be that non invasive test that just goes on the outside of the skull, and it's going to pick up abnormal brain waves with electrodes that are attached to your scalp. So some people will go through these whenever you guys see the little bars that we're going to show. That is kind of an example of what's going on. So we have our different kinds of waves. I'm just going to go ahead and click through them so you guys can write that down. Pause it if you need to. But we have our beta waves, alpha waves, theta waves, and delta waves. So let me move this little box in the corner. That way you guys can see better. Maybe. Okay. So our beta waves, those are going to show us whenever we're awake, we're normal, we're alert, we're conscious. So those are going to be those really tight waves, very high, vibrations per second. Just because we're awake, we're alert, we have different stimulus coming in. Next are going to be our alpha waves. So those are going to be our light sleep waves. So if you notice the vibrations per second gets a little bit lower, but also those waves are like way far spread apart. They're more curved off. They're not as drastic. So what they would show us is someone who is physically or mentally relaxed. Maybe they're aware, but they're a little bit drowsy. Next would be theta waves, so our early sleep. So this is going to be our reduced consciousness. So this can be deep meditation, light sleep, just something where you're kind of in that early stage of I'm not fully asleep yet, but I'm asleep for all intents and purposes. Then we have our delta waves, and that's going to show our deepest sleep. So if you look, this is almost kind of just like a slightly wavy line at this point. So that's going to show us in our deep sleep, dreamless state, and that's going to show our loss of body awareness. And while we sleep, our mind goes on this entire journey. So if you see on the green, we start out conscious, then we go into non REM sleep, cycle throughout that, and eventually REM, and we kind of plateau there and then sink right back down. So, stage one of non REM sleep is going to be our light sleep. So, again, that's where we have those alpha waves. That's where our brain is trying to kind of go back to the default state when we're idle. We are physically and mentally relaxed. Maybe we're practicing yoga, we are reading, we are meditating, we're about to fall asleep, but we're not quite there yet. So, we can refer to this as drifting on the edge of consciousness. It's going to be that transition period between wakefulness and sleeping, and kind of drifting in and out of sleep. So, with that, your theta wave activity increases and alpha wave activity fades away after about 5-10 minutes. Now, some people do experience a sort of hallucination. This is kind of a sensory experience that occurs without any sort of stimulus. So maybe they'll feel, see, or hear things that aren't necessarily there. That can happen for some people. Um, there's also the sensation of falling. So if you're someone where, you start to fall asleep and then you just kind of like jolt awake and you feel like you fell off a building, you feel like you're just kind of falling out of your bed and then you like wake up essentially and realize that you're totally fine. That's called your hypnic jerk. So that's going to be that sensation of like, oh, I'm starting to fall asleep. Boom, I'm awake. And your body just kind of naturally feels like it's falling. So it's kind of a mixture of that hallucination and that jerk because you're feeling a sensory stimulus that is not necessarily there. All right, so this is what stage one is going to look like. All right, so now we have stage two, which is called the sleep spindles. So what's going on? We have those theta waves. This is where we spend most of our night at. So our body temperature is going to drop, our heart rate's going to slow down, our breathing's going to get shallow and irregular. These stages usually last about 20 minutes at a time. So, what it's going to be showing? Well, first and foremost, an EEG, if someone's hooked up to it, is going to show the first signs of sleep spindles. So, this is brief bursts of activity lasting a second or two. So, if you look at our theta wave example to the side, you'll see that we have these little peaks and everything, but then we might have one drastic peak and it immediately dips back down, then kind of goes to our little peaks, and then maybe another drastic peak here and there. During this time, sleep talking is going to be one of the biggest things that people will experience. So it's usually just something that's garbled together. It doesn't make sense, but it can occur during stage two sleep or almost any other stage of sleep as well. But stage two is usually where it starts. And then again, we spend about 45% of our total sleep duration, so our total night, in stage 2 sleep. So it's definitely a long one for us. It's definitely something that we experience for quite a while. And again, you can see the sleep spindle labeled right there. All right, so let's move on to stages 3 and 4. So these are going to be our delta waves. So these are going to be our slowest brain waves. They take place during our deepest, usually dreamless sleep periods. And this allows the brain to help restore itself. So that's when we talked about, those very, very, very important regenerative factors of sleep. Well, the slow wave sleep, delta waves, start to appear more and more often as we stay asleep longer. So this will usually take about 35 to 45 minutes. This is a longer period of sleep, but typically it's the restorative stage of sleep, so it's harder to be woken up. With that being said, it's hard to arouse, so kind of like get someone's attention. Breathing is usually slowed down, pulse is slowed down, etc. This is a super, super important stage of sleep because this is your restorative sleep. This is how our muscles throughout our body, whether it is, muscles in our arms, legs, our heart, our brain, etc., our eyes, how they start to kind of just regenerate themselves. So it's very important that you're reaching this stage of sleep every night. All right, so next we're going to move into REM sleep. So this is paradoxical sleep. With that, rapid eye movement is what REM stands for. So essentially, they categorize this by saying, hey, your muscles are almost paralyzed during this time frame. You kind of have restored some stuff. Your eyes are moving around super, super crazy amounts. And your brain waves are going to look like they're actually awake. So, this is typically only a 10-minute period. So, when you hear people say, oh, you only dream for 10 minutes out of your dream, or 10 minutes out of your night, excuse me, it's not necessarily you only dream for 10 minutes. You cycle through REM just like how you do everything else. So, as it says down here, by morning, 20 to 25% of our average night sleep about 100 minutes has been REM sleep. So it's not necessarily true that you only, dream for 10 minutes over a whole night. It's just during that cycle, this is one of the shorter time frames. So again, this is usually when we get our dreams. It gets longer throughout the night. So it might start out being, maybe a 5-minute thing. It'll work its way up to 10 by the time it cycles through so many times. And there we go. So, our next lesson, we're going to start talking about different kinds of sleep disorders. So, come back for that, but we're going to go ahead and take a pause right here.